Hey, everybody. So I wanted to pop on today to talk a little bit about my story. I know there's lots of new people on the page, and welcome everybody. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about how I got from where I started, which was very, very sick, to where I am today. And because I think it might be of use to some of you if you're struggling with your diet or sticking with it and just finding it hard to continue when it feels so hard to eat in a way that's completely different from what you might be used to. So, hey, everybody, I'm Ricki Heller from rickiheller.com. And I help people on restricted diets learn to love their food so they can lose their symptoms, their bodies can heal, and they can get their lives back. So, I'm going to just quickly tell you a little bit about my story, and then I'm going to tell you what I learned along the way. And the two main things that I think are so important for everybody if we want to get better and we want to heal. So, um, some of you might know that I was diagnosed with like really bad candida in 2009. And this was actually following a huge bout of candida in 1999. So even though that was my very first diagnosis, I'm pretty sure that I was dealing with candida overgrowth long before that. I was having a lot of digestive symptoms. I was diagnosed with IBS. I have dry eye and blepharitis. I had all kinds of digestive issues. I had recurrent yeast infections, a whole bunch of stuff for years and years and years. And then finally in 1999, I was diagnosed. I followed the diet to a T. And for 10 years, after I had gotten a bit better, I went to nutrition school. I learned about holistic nutrition, how to eat a really healthful whole foods diet, which is what I did. And I more or less maintained a candida diet, but I was feeling great. And I was feeling so good, in fact, that around Christmas of 2008, I thought I could go back to eating some of the foods I had eaten before. So I decided to just have a little bit of like the shortbread cookies and the chocolate truffles and the things that were around at Christmas time. Hey, everybody. And before I knew it, of course, I was eating exactly the same way I had been before, which is what got me sick in the first place, eating handfuls of sugary processed foods, Betty Crocker frosting straight out of the can for breakfast or slathered on donuts for breakfast. I was eating Pringles out of the canister. I don't even know if they still make Pringles, actually. And just all the crappiest food full of sugar and flour and unhealthy fats that you can imagine. And of course, I got sick pretty quickly and I had this little rash on my chest. And even though as a holistic nutritionist, I thought this can't be good. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I'm pretty sure this must be the candida coming back. I didn't do anything about it because I couldn't face it. I had been on that harsh restricted diet for so long. So I ignored it and I kept eating. And by the beginning of the year in 2009, my rash had spread like across my entire torso. And so finally, after going from dermatologist to dermatologist, and all they could do was give me creams that didn't work, I finally found my naturopath, and I had a holistically minded MD working with me as well. And we went on this plan, and I followed the diet, again, the restricted diet. I was on natural supplements. I was on antifungals, prescription antifungals, and nothing happened. And I started to panic because I had these symptoms that were like really interfering with my life, right? All I could think about was this rash on my chest that wasn't getting better, and the fact that I had these recurrent sinus issues, and my eyes were dry and itchy, and I was foggy. I couldn't think straight. I was so tired all the time. And eventually things started to get a little better. It took about 6 months. And then for the next, so that was 2009. So for the rest of the time, up until about a year ago, the way I usually phrase it is I'm 95% symptom clear 99% of the time. But I would have these occasional flare ups if I was stressed out or if I, over the years, even though I've stuck almost perfectly to the candida diet, no sugar, no gluten, no caffeine, no moldy foods, no highly processed foods, et cetera, et cetera. I would still have these periods where, let's say, I found out that I could have some grains if I ate a little too many grains, I might have a flare. My rash would flare up again or something like that. But day to day, it was fine. And what I discovered was over time, and especially in the last few years, there was a point where it suddenly occurred to me, I haven't had a flare up in a really long time, like over a year. Then it was over 2 years. Now it's been about 2 years. And so I want to tell you what changed for me, because I think there's two really essential components to getting to that point, because now I don't even worry about it anymore. And whether you're following a diet because of Lyme disease or celiac or rheumatoid arthritis or some other chronic condition where the food is really, really important, what I think the first step is, and this is what I realized in retrospect, and this is what I work with people on when I work with people one-on-one and in my group programs, because I have come to believe that it's so important for someone's health. So of course, diet is really important, particularly if you're on a candida diet or any condition where, if I eat something and then the next day I don't feel well. I've had people say to me, I went out with friends and I knew that this was going to affect me for the next 3 days, but I decided to eat it anyway, right? So you usually know which foods are going to affect your body and which aren't. But the question is, why is it so hard to follow that? And so I think the first shift we have to make is just how we think about the diet, right? So for me, in the very beginning, it was all about the symptoms. And if you're feeling really ill, of course it is, right? But I call that the symptom swamp, because for so many of us, we get so stuck focusing on our symptoms. And I've got to get rid of this. I've got to get rid of this. It's a completely negative thought loop in our heads all the time. This is awful and I have to get rid of it. And the only way I can get rid of it is by eating this diet that I don't like, but that's going to make me feel better. So I'm going to do it. So there's this completely negative loop. So for the first thing for me that I did, and I know for me that was an advantage, having come from the world of professional baking and just having been a cook my whole life and having taught cooking classes. So I was able to take the restricted ingredients I had and turn them into foods that I loved. And I think that's the first step, because once I wasn't hating on my food anymore and I could actually look forward to eating stuff again, that's a much more positive way to approach your diet. So I think for most of us, the first thing we need to do is shift the way we think about the way we're eating. Yes, you may be losing some ingredients in your diet, but rather than focus on what you're losing, what's negative, focus on what you're gaining and what's positive, because that puts your mental energy in a much better place. And the more positive your thought process, believe it or not, the stronger your immune system. So studies have shown that people who are negative, people who are angry, people who are constantly focusing on the negative, their bodies are not actually as capable of fighting illness as people who are positive and more looking at the positive and really striving for something good. So you can actually boost your immunity. And I'm sure that was some part of it for me, that I really felt that the food was a positive thing in my life. But even more so, I would say it was when I decided that I just wasn't going to pay attention to those symptoms anymore. I remember telling myself, I know they're there, but I'm not going to let this interfere with my life. I am going to look at what I still can do, and I'm going to start doing that. Because as long as we're focused on what we're missing out on and what we're unable to do, we're going to be stuck. We're going to be stuck in that symptom swamp. We're going to be stuck in the woe is me mentality that you're constantly trying to climb out of that morass. But if you're able to say, here's one little thing I can do today, and then the next day, here's another little thing I can do today, and celebrate what you can do, you're going to find that eventually your mentality changes. And as I said, it was like a year later where I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, I haven't had a symptom flare, because I'd been too busy focusing on building my business and dealing and helping my clients and, writing my cookbooks. I was actually doing things that made me feel good about my life instead of putting all of my mental focus on what was negative in my life. And I think that really is almost the first step for so many people. yes, it might be a restricted diet, but if you know that that diet is going to help your body heal and ultimately allow you to do things in your life that you maybe even couldn't do before, then that's a real positive thing. And those positive thoughts are going to get you through to the other side. And so it was the belief, and for me, it was my naturopath who helped me with that belief. And I hope that I'm the person who helps my clients with that belief. But it was having someone who believed so strongly that I could get better that I took on that belief. And so once I started to believe that even though I didn't see any results right now, things could get better, then I was able to start acting as if things were getting better, which literally allowed things to get better. So again, it's a loop in the opposite direction. I'm going to believe things can get better, and then they do get better, and that's going to intensify my belief that things can get better, and so they're going to get better, and so on and so on. So I would say if there were two things that mentally for me made a huge difference in terms of my healing journey that got me where I am today, because I'm still not 100% back to never having any symptoms of any kind, but it's at the point where it absolutely isn't part of my life. It's not part of my mental processes anymore. I never worry that things are going to go back to the way they were before. I never worry that I'm going to get that sick again. I just know that my life is now moving in an upward trajectory when it comes to my physical health. And I probably feel better today than I did 20 years ago when this all started, right? So the first step I would say is having that belief that things can get better and really believing it. And if you aren't at a place yourself where you believe that, find somebody who knows, who can hold that belief for you until you're able to believe it. And then the second one is, again, I'll say like what I said earlier, getting out of the symptom swamp, not spending all of your mental and physical energy focusing on the symptoms, even if they're still there. You focusing on them and you stressing about them and you worrying about them isn't going to make them go away. They're still going to be there after all the stress and worry, but you're going to have stress and worry on top of the symptoms. So instead of putting your focus on the symptoms, put your focus on anything else that's positive in your life. Maybe you have a supportive spouse. Maybe you think your kids are adorable. In my case, my dogs are adorable. So I used to spend a lot of time with my dogs. Maybe looking out the window and seeing the brilliant sunshine. Maybe anything that you can find that's positive. And again, you want your food to be part of that, right? Because if this food is healing for you, then you want to be able to love that food, not only because it's what's helping your body get better, but because it actually tastes delicious. And so for me, that was an early step as well. So you want to learn to change the way you think around the food and also around your symptoms and focus on the positive. I know it sounds super simple. It's not that easy to do. It takes a lot of practice. And that's why I said, like I said, when I work with people, this is something we really work on. And for me, it took years, clearly, because I used to still get flare ups all the time when in the early days. It's only in recent years that that has completely subsided, but it makes a huge difference over time. And as the more you reinforce it, the better it gets. So I hope that's helpful for you. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or if there's anything you'd like me to talk about or answer. The other thing that I want to mention to you, especially if you are struggling with sticking with the food right now, is that I'm going to have a free workshop coming up at the end of this month called Healthy Through the Holidays, where I'm going to show you how easy it is to have delicious food even when you have dietary restrictions. And we're going to talk all around ways that we can change that perspective, change our mindset, so that going into the holidays, it's not going to feel like punishment to be on your diet. It's going to feel like you're doing something amazing for yourself that you are actually happy about, that you can be so proud about when you get to the new year, that you did that for yourself and your health and your future. All right, everybody. I hope that's helpful. As I said, I always come back and read the comments. So let me know if there's anything else that I can address for you. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.